I had always been a fan of vintage architecture, and when I found this charming apartment on Oak Street, I knew it was the perfect fit for me. It had high ceilings, hardwood floors, and a lot of character. It wasn't until after I moved in that I started to notice the strange occurrences. It started with small things, a misplaced item, a door that I thought I had closed now open. I tried to brush it off as just my own forgetfulness, but then the whispering started. At first, it was just a faint murmur, barely audible over the hum of the air conditioner. But as the nights went on, the whispers grew louder and more insistent. It was like there were people talking in the other room, but when I went to investigate, there was no one there. It was unsettling, to say the least. But things really took a turn for the worse when I started to feel like I was being watched. It was like there was something in the apartment with me at all times, a presence that I couldn't shake. I started sleeping with the lights on, and even then, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. One night, as I lay in bed trying to ignore the whispers, I heard a noise coming from the living room. It was like something was dragging across the floor, leaving a faint scraping sound in its wake. I hesitated for a moment, but then I knew I had to investigate. I got out of bed and slowly made my way towards the living room, my heart pounding in my chest. When I got there, I saw something that made my blood run cold. The coffee table was moving on its own, sliding slowly across the floor as if being pushed by an invisible force. I stood there, frozen in place, as the table slid closer and closer. And then, with a sudden burst of energy, it flipped over onto its side, sending books and magazines flying in all directions. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. It was like the apartment was alive, and it was trying to scare me out of my mind. In the days that followed, things only got worse. The whispers turned into full-blown conversations, with multiple voices speaking at once. Doors would slam shut on their own, and objects would move from one place to another when I wasn't looking. It was like the ghostly presence in the apartment was becoming more and more powerful, feeding off my fear and desperation. Finally, I knew I had to do something. I couldn't keep living like this, constantly on edge and afraid. So I contacted a paranormal investigator, hoping that they could help me get to the bottom of what was happening. The investigator arrived at my apartment with all sorts of equipment, EMF readers, infrared cameras, and other tools that I didn't even know existed. As we walked through the apartment, the investigator explained that there was indeed a ghostly presence in the apartment, one that had been there for quite some time. The investigator conducted a thorough investigation, trying to communicate with the spirit and understand why it was haunting my apartment. As we sat in the living room, the investigator suddenly froze, staring intently at something across the room. I followed their gaze and saw a misty figure slowly forming in the air, its features indistinct and blurred. It was like nothing I had ever seen before, a ghostly apparition that seemed to be reaching out towards us. The investigator quickly started asking questions, trying to get a response from the ghost. And then, to my surprise, the ghost actually answered. It was a woman, the ghost told us, a woman who had lived in the apartment years ago, and who had died under mysterious circumstances. She had never been able to rest, the ghost said, and she had been haunting the apartment ever since. It was a chilling revelation, and it explained so much of what I had been experiencing. But then, just as quickly as it had appeared, the ghostly apparition vanished, leaving us alone in the silent apartment. The investigator told me that they would do some more research and see if they could find any records of the woman who had died in my apartment. In the meantime, they suggested that I try to make peace with the ghost, to let it know that I wasn't there to harm it. It was easier said than done, of course. But over time, I tried to be more understanding of the ghostly presence in my apartment. I started speaking to it, telling it that I meant no harm and that I was just trying to live my life. And then, one day, something incredible happened. As I was sitting in my living room, reading a book, I felt a sudden breeze wash over me. It was like the air in the room had changed, becoming lighter and more peaceful. And then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw a misty figure forming in the air. But this time, it was different. It was like the figure was taking shape, becoming more solid and defined. I watched in amazement as the figure of a woman slowly materialized in front of me. She was young and beautiful, with long hair and a serene expression on her face. For a moment, I was too stunned to speak. But then, as the ghostly figure looked at me with kind eyes, I knew that everything was going to be okay. The woman had finally found peace, I realized, and I could finally live in my apartment without fear or apprehension. It was like the ghostly presence had been a part of my life for so long that it was strange to imagine it not being there anymore. But as I settled into my new life in the apartment, I knew that I would always remember the ghostly presence that had once haunted me. It was a reminder that even in the darkest of times, there is always hope for a brighter future. As I sit here writing this, I can't help but wonder what other secrets are hiding in the world around us. There are so many mysteries waiting to be uncovered, so many ghostly presences waiting to be understood. But for now, I'm just happy to have found peace in my haunted apartment on Oak Street. It's a reminder that even in the darkest of times, there is always hope for a better tomorrow.